How's it going, everybody? The first must-see game, if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, from this year's Zurich Chess Challenge, taking place right now, and you can follow all the news and reports from Peter Dockers. Go ahead and click here for the most recent report. Was the round 2 victory by Vishy Anand over Levon Aronian, and let's just say it was exciting, educational, and left us something to think about as far as the matchup between these two players. We had a Grunfeld, which of course is nothing to write home about. Black strikes with d5, and a declined Grunfeld, so to speak, not the main lines, but this queen to b3 variation is only increasing in popularity. The main strategical principle behind this move is that White's going to lose some time with the queen, and the time it's going to take to recapture back the pawn, and potentially the queen will find herself in a tactically awkward scenario depending on what happens. But of course, White is willing to sacrifice that time for the compensation of the full center that you're going to see White get in a lot of these positions. And so that would be the brief summary to put it in layman terms of what's going on in this line. And we saw this variation in Anand Carlsen from the World Championship that just took place in Sochi back in November. So we'll talk about the difference between that game and this one. This early knight a6 line is not the most common move played here if you look it up in the database, but obviously, as we said, Carlsen played it against Anand, and here Aronian decides to repeat. Main idea being exactly what happens here. Black is trying to strike with c5 early and often, and from the perspective of why doesn't White just capture the pawn, in a lot of positions, White can't hold on to this pawn anyway after moves like bishop to e6 and the queen starts to get herself kicked around a little bit. If this pawn falls and brings this knight to the center in the process, it's not going to be an ideal setup for White anyway. So White is not normally looking to capture the pawn. d5 is the approach, and after e6, castles, captures. This is all theory. And after rook to e8 here, Vishy played the first different move if we're talking about the last time he played this position, which was against Carlsen in Sochi. That game continued with bishop to g5, and after h6, the bishop came back to e3, which you'll see is similar, and potentially some of the tactics that occurred in this game could have happened in the Carlsen game if Carlsen had ventured for this knight to e4 move rather than knight to g4 move rather than what he did in the game, which was bishop f5 and trying to get the knight to e4. But we'll talk about the tactics that occurred in this game here in a second, and you'll remember some of the stuff I'm talking about here. But the main point is that here Vishy varies, and instead of playing the line from the game in Sochi, he plays rook to d1, and after bishop to f5, plays d6. The early driving of the d pawn means we're getting a little bit excited. From a strategical perspective, this move makes a ton of sense, especially after the bishop is committed to f5. You're not really looking for the queen to lose any time from some little attacks here, and the pawn on d6 serves a kind of specific purpose. It takes away the c7 square from the knight. And in the process of just pushing a very potentially powerful passed pawn and maybe tactics that occur there, Black's options are now limited, and Black has to make something happen here on the e-file, which is not a surprise. That's where most of Black's pieces are, but the tactics that occur here, which were definitely preparation for Anand, are really exciting and interesting to watch. Sorry about that. Small distraction. After h6, to prevent bishop to g5, White plays bishop to e3, and here the move knight to e4 would have been the standard move, I guess, in terms of how Black has approached this position. Black is trying to use the e-file, trying to open up both of the bishops, and it's a pretty standard way to try to simplify the position. But knight to g4 looks like it's begging to be played. I mean, you're in a position to attack the dark square bishop, which is certainly a key piece. Tactically, with the queen on e4, you start looking at all kinds of opportunities, not rook e3, but rook e4 to take advantage of that. And so it's tricky. And with knight to g4, Anand played the first sort of surprise of the game with the move bishop f4. Quickly, we'll look at queen f4 since that was the main move played before. This line here looks messy, but in the end, White really isn't worried about too much, despite actually being down 2 pawns in this exact position, certainly with the pawn on d7 and multiple weaknesses to to talk about. I don't think White's really in danger of losing this position, and maybe that's what Aronian expected as far as that being the last main game here. But Anand played the move bishop to f4, which at first has everyone thinking, did he just blunder a piece, right? Because it's not a tricky combination to see that bishop takes c3 forces the pawn to take, because the queen takes would allow the rook to capture on e2. So the queen simply seems to be to have put herself in an overwhelmed position. So after bishop takes c3 and b takes c3, rook e4, now the queen is in trouble, having to guard both the bishop on f4 and the bishop on e2, and that's one too many bishops to guard if you're keeping track at home. So I remember when I first reviewed the game, I actually was watching the position from this moment on. Of course, the commentators had already gone further into seeing that this was not just a simple piece blunder, and that obviously Anand likely had something up his sleeve. But the level of which he was prepared in this position is still kind of surprising. And the analysis, you'll actually see this in the article, the news report by Peter Dockers, suggests that Black did have a chance to equalize, but Aronian made comments that he had seen bishop before and forgot later, and I was told by a very strong grandmaster friend of mine that he kind of called on that, if I can't really, right, let's just say that I'm barking, meaning he didn't actually believe that was true and thinks that was just something that was said. But what we're going to see here is that it's instructive because strategical concepts back up tactics. The tactical parts of the position are backed up by strategical concepts, and here we have this really bad knight on a6, which, if you look at the position, has no way to regain the fight, at least not directly, on c7 or b4. You have a knight on g4, which, without help to justify any sort of pressure on the king side, is really just a misplaced pony at this point. And two misplaced pieces combined with the potential power of a passed pawn on the 6th rank makes us think that there may be something here. And so, again, we talk about warning signs, recognizing things that are awkward about a position and letting those be sort of the tells, if you will, like a poker tell, or the suggestion that you might look further past just obvious combinations and dismiss this position and say, oh, White's just losing a piece, because there are some awkward things about your opponent's camp, and so that usually gives you the urge to keep looking. And here, obviously, Anand and his team did just that, because after queen b5 and queen takes b7, immediately the whole evaluation of this situation changes, and White is just better here, and Black has really only one way to play the position to even hold on. He played rook a4, which makes sense. White doesn't want to just go pick up the piece right away on a6, because after rook to b8, the queen is going to get herself a little bit overwhelmed. Queen takes a7, the rook can come back to a8, and White will still end up being down a piece. Queen to c6 is also going to be met with bishop to d7. I believe, actually, Anand potentially in his analysis, I actually have that line. He said that he looked at this position with bishop takes a6, queen c6, and bishop d7 almost 20 years ago with Fritz III, which at first I wasn't sure if it was a joke, right? Anytime somebody busts out the old Fritz III reference, you're like, are you kidding me? But back then, I could beat Fritz, all right? So that gives you an idea of the strength of the computer. And he said he gave up on looking at the line with his team of seconds, and it looks like with good reason, because the queen is overwhelmed, and the bishop will fall, and Black will remain up a piece, and in a good position to stop this passed d6 pawn. But having taken a look again at this line with stronger computers these days, that allows you to, again, look at the strategical awkwardness of your opponent's position and be willing to play moves that don't seem so obvious when you're down a piece and you're looking for something forcing to justify a sacrifice, and you find very strong moves like d7. And at this point, this is when Aronian was claiming to still have seen the position, and when my friend is saying that he doesn't really believe it. He thinks that Anand really is great at his preparation, and we've seen him pull out some tricks against Levon Aronian before. If you remember a YouTube video of mine, I'll link it up for you right here, reviewing his big win over Vishy and Viking Z from a couple years ago, I think 2013. Just took Aronian down in this preparation that was really something special to watch. The game of the year at that point. And this has definitely been one of the games of the tournament so far. So D7, and you look at the position, and black is already in an only move scenario. There's not many good moves here at all. We'll analyze them. Knight to C7 is the first move you have to look at strategically, because as soon as this pawn is pushed to D7 and is no longer strangling the square, that suggests to you that why not just bring the knight back into the game. But the main reason is that after H3, basically black is in no choice. He has no choice but to actually just give back the piece. Moves like knight to F6 are met with a couple of different things. I have to remember the line here. I spent some time looking at. I think the most logical move is just knight to E5, which not only protects the D7 pawn, but also and mainly threatens the move knight to C6, followed by punching this pawn through. And black is not holding on in this scenario, not at all. So knight to E5 is very strong. Of course, you can take a look at it later. But if knight takes F2 is played, and we get a line like this where black is holding on, and you could evaluate this position as rough equality, and that's what the commentators did. I personally feel like this position is, in a practical sense, much better for white. I look at the awkward rook, I look at the potential to bring more pieces into the play, and I look at threats of knight e5. So Anand said even in the postgame that he thought this position probably should be equal, but sometimes I think Anand says things like that almost as a suggestion to his opponents that this is where black's improvement is, so make sure you repeat this line against me. Little pro tip, hashtag pro tip, you shouldn't always believe what the strongest players in the world say, especially right after a game is finished. Often in the commentary room, the loser is emotionally frustrated and may say things that aren't exactly true as far as how deeply they saw something, or that their mistake was really just small and they were tricked, when really they lost the game purely because they were just completely outplayed or surprised by Anand's bishop before. And in this case, I believe my friend and possibly Aronian wasn't as prepared for bishop before as he might have suggested. And also the winner doesn't really want to reveal too much, because he may think there are more areas for black to misstep in this line. So to make a suggestion like that, I mean, I don't know. Maybe unbiasedly black is fine here, but that's just a word to the wise for maybe some amateur chess players who wouldn't think to ever second-guess the chess gods that are the super GMs and the best players in the world. But I second-guess them often, and that's just because I'm crazy. But I don't totally believe that, and I think white is already doing really well here. And so the best move is actually suggested to be knight c7, and if that's the best, then we know that white was already doing well. In the game, Aronian played bishop to e4 instead of knight to c7. But after queen to b3, immediately ran into serious problems. Bishop c6 is met by rook d6, and as Anand said himself, this position is just playing itself for white. The bishop is under attack, and if you don't see the other threat, then you might want to be solving some more daily puzzles, to get an idea of some pin tactics. But rook to d6 is there's just too many threats, too many pieces under fire here by multiple pieces of white, and just awesomeness happening. The game was over in a few moves. Rook to d1. You know you're winning when you can just trade queens into an endgame and your opponent still can't deal with all of their weaknesses. And in this case, white just played rook to d6, which is a fork, threatening rook takes a6 and the move rook takes g6 check, winning the knight. And so, okay, black played a couple more moves, but resigned here, is down a piece and much worse to go with it. So super fun, a super instructive win by our man Vishy. If you're a Vishy fan, I've always been a Vishy fan. You guys know that. Hashtag soft spot in my heart for the old tiger from Madrid. But he still got it. And one thing that Vishy has done probably better than anybody in the chess world since the retirement of the great Garry Kasparov, I don't even think any GMs would argue with me in terms of that. I mean, he won his matches with Kramnik and Topalov, and in large part due to great preparation, huge wins with the black pieces. And even though he wasn't able to show and flex his muscles as far as preparation against Magnus Carlsen in the last two World Championship matches, as fans of Vishy would like, then he ends up playing in tournaments after the World Championship and wins games like this based purely on preparation, right? So Vishy's still one of the best in the world, and definitely the best in the world since Kasparov at prep, and a big win for him over Aronian. What does it mean for their relationship? It means they have tension in their relationship, because Anand is kind of pushing old Levon Aronian around right now in terms of some of these big wins. So hope you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter. Go ahead and follow hashtag Zurich Chess, a great tournament being played right now. And go to Chess.com and check out all of our reports. Peter Dockers is the best in the world at what he does as far as covering major events, and you don't want to miss it. So thank you, everybody. Out.